Bloody Bits.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jason Benet, and welcome to Benet's Bloody Bits. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Marcey Papandrea, but we call her Super Marcey. So I would like to welcome Super Marcey here to talk about John Carpenter's 1994 film, In the Mouth of Madness. Welcome, Marcey.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite and that I got to choose one of my favorite movies to chat about. I'm very excited.
So just so people know, can you tell everybody a little bit about you? Because you and I, we used to write together for a website called Killer Film, but where did you start? Who have you written for, and what are you doing now as far as podcast and vidcasting?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long time. We've known each other for quite a long time. That website was over 10 years ago, I think, when we were writing. But back then, it was there. I think more horror and Arrow in the Head I was writing for or contributing to. And then I have my own website since, I think, 2009, so quite a long time, just supermarcey.com, and I have like 6, I think, podcasts under the under the super network, as we call it, as well as my own solo podcast as well. So I do too much podcasting and don't have a life.
So let's talk about In the Mouth of Madness. I'm going to just let you start. It's more your movie, but I do like it too. When did you first see it?
Probably about, I guess I'm trying to think. It was a decent time ago. I don't remember if it was like still on video or if there was a DVD, but it was one that I remember like the cover in the video store a lot, and it was just very mysterious. And I think I was trying to take away the blind spots, not take away the blind spots, but watch blind spots from like John Carpenter's filmography and a few others. And it just blew me away. It was like, it's unlike anything else that John Carpenter has done, but it certainly fits into that trilogy of the apocalypse in a way as well. It's a different kind. And being that I was very much like, I grew up with Stephen King and was getting into Lovecraft, it was like the perfect blend of these two things. I mean, more so Lovecraft, but there is definitely a lot of Stephen King in there as well. It's John Carpenter put those two together and made one of my favorite like weird fucked up horror movies.
You said trilogy, so we know the first movie in John Carpenter's apocalyptic trilogy is The Thing, followed by Prince of Darkness, and then caps it off with In the Mouth of Madness. I'm old school, literally. I saw it in the theaters in 1994.
I wish I could have seen it in the theaters back then. I was not old enough.
Were you old? Were you even alive? Because
I was still a kid when it came out, so it would have been early 2000s that I saw it.
Well, the first Carpenter film I saw in theaters was The Fog, then Escape from New York, and then Mouth of Madness. And it's so sad that there was nobody in the theater when I went to go see it.
It's a shame.
If you actually look at all his films, aside from maybe Halloween, that is par for the course. His movies don't do well in theaters, and they end up finding their audience on cable or home video. So that was kind of a bummer. I was like, there's nobody here. And I was there opening weekend. And that was the early 90s for box office, especially for horror films. That people just weren't coming out. And it didn't really change until 96 with Scream. But yeah,
that was the movie that changed it all for people actually going to watch horror or horror adjacent films. But then like it would be on home video or TV or whichever, like that's where the audience was. And I think it wasn't until Scream at least kind of picked that right back up again with people actually going to the theater to watch a horror movie again.
So we know that, that the main character in the film is Sutter Kane, but he really is H.P. Lovecraft without saying H.P. Lovecraft. I wasn't too aware of his work, gotten better, affiliated with it since then. Were you aware of H.P. Lovecraft and the influences the film had with him?
Yes, I kind of picked it up, especially just with the title, "In the Mouth of Madness," and I was sort of thinking, is this take of the Mountains of Madness, from Lovecraft? So already, like, the title has that influence there. But there's like at the beginning of the film, there's these little nods like Sutter Kane outsells even Stephen King. So it's like you've got a bit of that. It's as if like Stephen King was under the influence of Lovecraft in the 90s, is how I look at it with how the story is there, because I feel like that's King acts as like, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's like a vessel in the way of, let's do this really popular horror author, the book covers and the way like Sutter Kane is written, it's very reminiscent of King books, but at the same time, it's kind of reminiscent of Lovecraftian things. And it is a Lovecraft story, but I feel like it's almost told in a King way. And we know that John Carpenter did adapt Stephen King with Christine, so he's not a stranger to it. But I feel like he wanted to do a Lovecraft story by the way of Stephen King, and that's exactly what the film is. So I was definitely aware of Lovecraft. Before I saw this, I had discovered Reanimator, which is my most favorite horror movie ever, which is of course based on Lovecraft. And then I was like, okay, I need to really read up and read the stories of Lovecraft. So I was definitely aware of that. But as you're watching it, you definitely pick up the little bits and pieces. And the more you watch it, the more you pick up on the references, I think.
I appreciate too that it kind of opens with like almost like a Metallica like guitar
Yes.
rock song, and then it kind of gets told, you find out where John Trent ends up at the end, but then we kind of go backwards. So it's kind of that trippy messes with
Mm.
your head space. And I just like how John Trent's character is just this insurance, investigator, kind of arrogant, cocky. He's used to debunking people, and I think that's what works on the cerebral level is his descent into knowing everything, to questioning everything about who he is. And at one point, Sutter Kane's like, "You didn't exist until I wrote you," and he's like, "I know who I am." He's like, "Do you?" And I think that's great acting. I know that John Carpenter and Sam Neill, had previously worked on Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which wasn't a good experience for Carpenter. He hates the film. He said Chevy Chase was very difficult to work with, which other people have validated that, have worked with him on different projects, unfortunately.
Yes.
But I'm glad they got to come back for this. What did you think of Sam Neill?
I love Sam Neill. I think he's a fantastic actor. And I think Sam Neill sort of took off a lot with people for Jurassic Park. But being that he had been in like New Zealand, Australian films before that, if you did see movies you weren't supposed to on TV at that point, I distinctly remember Dead Calm was probably the big introduction to Sam Neill before Jurassic Park. But I think that's sort of like, oh yeah, but he's made a lot of interesting films, and I like when he dives into stuff like this. I do think his accent, and I think it's on purpose, changes throughout the film, because we know by the end of the film he's a fictional character written by Sutter Kane in The Mouth of Madness. And I know people pick up on that and think it's like it's a choice with not a choice, sorry, but just him not being able to do the accents properly. But I'm like, no, 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 that's totally on purpose.
What is his accent? Where is he from?
He's from New Zealand, I
New
think.
Zealand.
I think Australia just tends to adopt
Yeah, I thought he was
everybody.
I thought he was Aussie like you, but then I thought, no, he's not. I don't know what he is. I think it's New Zealand. So
Yes. I mean, like, freaking hell. Russell Crowe is not technically Australian either, but he's just been adopted in.
I first saw Sam, I think, was the Final Conflict when he played the
Of course, yes.
Damien, but running for
Damien.
president. I think I caught Possession later, even though it came out before. Or no, same. No, I'm wrong. I think they came out at the same time. Possession, Final Conflict, 81 ish. Dead Calm, Jurassic Park, and then yeah, I think In the Mouth of Madness really kind of was more of a mainstream film for him. And Julie Carmen's in it, which I had first seen her in Fright Night Part 2. I thought they made a good couple. What did you think of their dynamic?
Yeah, for this, I think it works. You kind of need, because how the film is, it's like these two people are going off to do their investigating. And I think you needed some kind of dynamic to play off each other. And the more that he gets sucked in, it's kind of terrifying. And you can see that with her character.
What about the small role, but significant Charlton Heston, Mr. Moses himself, as I almost forget he's in the movie. It's so short, but he makes his presence felt in the
Yeah.
short time he's there.
When I rewatched it recently for this discussion, I'd forgotten he was in it. So I'm like, oh yeah, we get the freaking Charlton Heston cameo. And yeah, he does make his presence felt. But the other small little role that's hidden in this film, and I remember like when I did see the movie, I noticed it because or at least I noticed it. I don't think the first time I watched it, but the second time, because certain prequel trilogies had come out, there's a young Hayden Christensen in there. And
As
that always kind of makes me laugh because it's like, wait a second.
That's he's like the paper boy, right?
Yeah, he's on the bike. I think it's towards the end.
That's so cool that there's a Star Wars connection to In the Mouth
There's
of
even a
Madness.
Star Wars connection. Yeah.
Now, what did you think of Jurgen Prochnow? I do love the hairdo.
Oh, that's an amazing hairdo. My hair is annoying me right now. Yes.
At least you have hair.
Well, that is true. That is true. Yeah, if I could wear Jurgen Prochnow's hair in this movie, I totally would. But he's this, like, it leads up to when we first actually see him, which I really liked. We just hear the name Sutter Kane, but we don't know exactly who this person is. And I love his first reveal. It's so great. And he took that role and was like, I'm gonna do something with it. I'm gonna give it my all. And he really does. Like, I actually wouldn't want to meet Sutter Kane at all because he's kind of terrifying.
Is his reveal at the church doors where they go open, close, and the dogs are
Yes, with
in
the
front of it?
light and the breeze. Yeah. It's just so well done because at that point you don't know what the fuck to expect. And then there he is.
I thought it was genius how John Trent starts picking up the books, collecting them, trying to figure it out. And he's sitting there at night and he looks and goes, I figured out how to find him. And he rips off the pages of the book, cuts it out, and there's a map of a town that doesn't really exist on a regular map, but it's kind of how the beacon, the home base, how we find Sutter Kane. I thought that was clever before we get to him, that we kind of have this little trippy little map.
Yeah. Yeah. It just goes with the film being that kind of trippy, like almost out of body experience because things just get weirder and weirder. But I do like how it's structured. And when we do get he's looking at the book covers and it's like the light bulb moment. And there's all these little hints that he somehow manages to pick up on and nobody else has. and then you understand why, because again, Sutter Kane says, well, I wrote you.
I know that they shot the film in Canada, and John Carpenter's like me. We're California guys, and we don't like cold weather. I know. I read an interview. He's like, it was brutal. It got down to the bone because he's used to warm weather. But I guess that most likely they shot it there for tax breaks or just cheaper to go there. But that church that you were talking about, that's a real church. So that is not something built. So I think the authenticity of that was really there really helps the film.
Yeah, I don't want to visit that church. The end of the world might happen. I don't want to go there.
So what did you think of the makeup effects, which was K and B? Did you like them? Do you think they should have showed more of it? Was it hidden because H.P. Lovecraft's work is more about what you don't see?
I think that's it. I think we get enough. I don't think we needed more than we got. But that's why I love the film. I think everything is just really well done. And again, it goes back to using your influence with Lovecraft, and there's a lot of the terrors that you don't quite see. And I think that leads into, again, the reveal of Sutter Kane is we don't really know what this who this person is, what he looks like, how he acts, and then we get this kind of reveal, but we still don't get like this insane amount of him. He is still he feels like more of this I guess I'll say evil presence in the film, because we know Sutter Kane has done some very bad things to get where he is, which we find out. But I think it's just done very, very clever. And a lot of the really iconic things from this film, like visuals, is the Sutter Kane reveal, but also Sam Neill covered in the crosses in the hospital. And I think that just on that visual level, it is very striking. So I think they hit the right balance of things, which makes it work.
I have two thoughts about it. Watching it then and watching it now, it's completely different. In 1994, we still weren't far removed from The Thing, which wasn't an H.P. Lovecraft film at all, but those monsters were definitely influenced. I was really disappointed in the lack of the monsters, and then the work that was done did not, it looked kind of rubbery. Now I know that when Rob Bottin did The Thing, they said he had like a year prep. So maybe he had an advantage that these guys didn't. But I honestly feel like, what was the reasoning to not show the monsters? Was it because Lovecraft's not known for showing things, or was Carpenter really not convinced that they looked that great?
It could be a bit of both, but I think the fear and the terror is in that unknown. So for me, I think it works that we don't really see, because whatever it could be is not going to be as terrifying as what is in your imagination.
Well, but if I watch it now, completely different person than I was then. It's more the cerebral parts of the film I appreciate, the going mad, the going crazy, losing control, then the visceral stuff, because I was a lot younger then. So I was into more of that, give me the gore, the violence, and it's in the film, but not like, I had expectations. It's John Carpenter, there's monsters, it's H.P. Lovecraft. So I was a little bit let down when I left the theaters. I remember I liked the film, but I was like, oh, they held back so much. Like, when the best part for me, the film, when Sutter Kane pulls his face apart like a book, rips open this portal to another dimension, and then the monsters start coming forward and you don't really see them, and it's over so quick. I was like, man, that was a bummer. But older Jason has different appreciation than when I watched it, geez, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Like I've always like gotten something out of the film, and again, like I said, I do like that we don't quite see everything, because then it's your imagination that can run wild. But I think one of the other things with this film is it's got a quote unquote meta part to it, and people were definitely not sort of in tune already for that, and I think we saw that with and this just goes with films kind of released in the early 90s with like even The Last Action Hero. People did not understand like the purpose of this film. It went over their heads at the time. Plus she had Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is this self-aware set in the real world. I don't think people were quite ready to understand that, and I think this kind of falls into that in this self-awareness. And again, it wasn't until Scream that it kind of clicked with people of this self-aware meta quote unquote thing, which, you know, perhaps if this movie came out like just after Scream or something, maybe people would have gotten it then, but people certainly have an appreciation for it now that it's kind of got a cult following, I suppose.
The Last Action Hero is a hot mess, but it's a lovely. I enjoy the film, all things considered, and literally Arnold Schwarzenegger took it so hard. The big budget film didn't make its money back. Everyone trashed it, but I find that film is watchable as some of his better films just because it's camp and it's funny and it does things differently. It's a movie within a movie. It was kind of ahead of its time, really.
I mean, I saw that when it came out on video, I think, and I loved it. I loved like Arnold movies, I loved action movies, and it was, yeah, it's like that camp silliness, but it's also just spoofing everything, and it's very self-aware. I always have a good time watching The Last Action Hero. I will defend that movie till my dying breath. Just
And
saying.
you should. My opinion about opinions is you should stick to them. If you like, to me, there's no such thing as guilty pleasures.
No.
If you like something, there's no guilt. And I appreciate the part in Last Action Hero where I think Arnold's in a video store and he walks by a standee of Sylvester Stallone. I think it's Rambo. And he kind of just laughs because at that time
he's Sylvester Stallone as the Terminator.
Oh, there you go. See,
in the alternate reality.
And you have to remember this is 1993. These are the two biggest action heroes on the planet. So they become friendly over the years since, but at that time, they were both jockeying for, you know, who's the biggest action star in the world. And of course, you have a talking cat, right? Was there a talking cat in there? Or an animated cat of some kind? Or was like
yes. I had to think for a second. It's the animated. It does that Roger Rabbit thing where animated characters just exist in there.
That's right, folks. We've gone from In the Mouth of Madness to Last Action Hero. Deal with it, because that's where this. Let's just let it go wherever it goes.
Misunderstood early 90s self-aware movies that went over audiences' heads, I think.
No, I still appreciate it. And so as far as In the Mouth of Madness, oh, you know, before I forget, David Warner is also in the film. Not a big role, but I loved him in The Exorcist, The Omen. He has since passed away, but I just want to make sure I recognize David Warner's in the Mouth of Madness. I almost forgot.
Yes, I love David Warner, and you know, some of my favorite David Warner movies would be Tron.
Oh, I love
Not
Tron.
that people associate Tron that much with David Warner, but hell yeah. I mean, look, he owned it in Titanic. Let's be real.
Tron
he
is
had
one
a
of those...
role, and he's like, I'm gonna do the best thing I can fucking do, and he did that every time.
I love Tron, and I actually like the sequel. One of the things at the time about the time you and I were writing for Killer Film, I think it was 2010. I got to go to
coming out, or we kind of covered it, I think.
I got to go to San Diego Comic-Con one of two times as press for Killer Film. And I got to do the press chunk, and it was just very surreal. And they recreated the arcade, Flynn's arcade from the film. And it just, I only went twice as press, but I still have good memories of, I haven't been since 2011 because it's so chaotic. I just kind of, I don't know about you. I know you still do conventions. I used to go to all of them, and I kind of, the novelty wore off, and I got burned out.
I've definitely dropped off.
Did you?
I can't afford it. I don't have the energy. Half the time here, they're in locations that aren't the easiest to get to, at least for me. So it just kind of drops off. But hey, if Sam Neill wanted to come to a convention, like I'd be there, and I'd be like, sign my In the Mouth of Madness, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Southern California, but I'm about 2.5 hours from San Diego, which is not far. Have you ever been to San Diego Comic-Con?
Nope.
I mean, I guess everyone should go once, but once you're there, it's so crowded and so overwhelming that you really can't appreciate the experience because you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're in lines. Like Hall, it's called Hall H is the main auditorium for whatever big movies, Marvel, DC, whatever. You have to wait in line for hours.
Yeah,
When
that's like panic attack central for me. I couldn't do it.
you're not a big crowd person either.
I
Like,
hate crowds. I don't like being around a lot of people. So yeah, I probably would just enjoy sitting in Sam Neill's little room drawing crosses on myself than go to a really crowded convention.
yeah, it's worth it to go once, but man, I haven't been. The last time I went, when I was there, literally an hour afterwards, I'm like, why the fuck am I here? Like, I just wanted to get back in my car and go home, just because I was like, there's so many people. I mean, you're on top of each other, and like, just to go to a restaurant like that's walking distance from the convention center, everything is crowded.
Yeah.
Hotels and restaurants, and I'm not a big people person per se, and I don't. That's probably why horror conventions work better for me. One, I love horror more, and two, they're not as busy as
Yes.
the because
Yeah.
Comic Con encompasses everything: horror, sci-fi,
Yeah. At
fantasy.
least
But
something that's specific to something like a horror convention. And that's what I wish we had here. We had like one years and years ago, and that's been it. And I would love to have something that was just kind of horror focused that we could go to here. And I would certainly say, hey, Sam Neill, come to this convention.
so there's not a horror convention of any
Nope.
kind in Australia.
Nope.
And that's
If there
weird
is, I
because
don't know about it, but I do not think so. No.
that sucks because I've seen other countries get it that are not as well known as Australia. It's very weird. And
I think
Australia's
we
put
just
out
need
so
I think we just need someone to have the resources to actually put something on, I guess.
yeah, that's just weird. I've seen like other
Mm.
countries that are not. Australia has so many cult filmmakers and exploitation. Brian Trenchard Smith and all the Greg McLean, and you guys have people that either live there or you guys have a genre history that I know there's got to be big time horror fans over there. That's
Oh,
unfortunate.
definitely. Like uh one of the podcasts I do is like watching every single Ozploitation film, which is Australian exploitation, which started in 1970, was the first lot of films. And there's a lot of horror. Like we trying to think of the movie. I think it's Night of Fear, which is almost a precursor to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was released before that actually came out. And we've got a lot of just really interesting horror films. As I'm discovering some that I haven't seen, there is a lot of Ozploitation films. So you would think there would be some kind of audience for horror, but you see kind of at the main conventions we have, they do try to get like Australian people from those kinds of films. Like you will see John Jarrett, who played Mick Taylor in Wolf Creek, is usually a guest and stuff. And sometimes like some people from Mad Max, obviously not Mel Gibson because that's not going to happen, but stuff like that. But it would be good to have something that was just generally horror centric because Australia has done a lot of horror films, and I'm only in the early 80s of this journey. And this is watching 5 movies a month to get through them. And there's still a lot to go. The 80s, and I think as we get through to the 90s and 2000s, there's going to be a lot more horror films because, as mentioned, we got Wolf Creek and such and such. But I will say, seeing as we are talking about In the Mouth of Madness and Sam Neill, he has popped up in some of these Ozploitation movies so far.
Have you ever seen Paul Anderson's Event Horizon with Sam Neill?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that before I saw this. And again, it is I love that film. It is a very cosmic horror Lovecraftian type of story as well. And again, Sam Neill just owns it in that role. I feel like his character went through In the Mouth of Madness, became self-aware, realized he was a book character, and then just found himself on the in Event Horizon some years later.
You know what? Not until just now did I think of it. I know the connection because of Sam Neill, but Paul Anderson loves John Carpenter. In the Mouth of Madness came out in 94. I think Event Horizon was 97. There are scenes with the cut editing where there's a scene, I think Sam Neill, after he's turned in Event Horizon, shoves somebody's face down and they see like a bunch of subliminal images. That's straight from Sutter Kane doing it in the Mouth of Madness. The gore, the editing, the splicing of footage. I almost feel like Event Horizon's an unofficial sequel.
It
Like
could be. That would make a great double feature, right?
Just if you watch those films back to back, Paul Anderson definitely took some things from In the Mouth of Madness with the style, not just the Sam Neill, but the style, the editing, you see the gore, but it's not lingering on it for too long. I don't know if that was the MPAA thing where they would cut stuff, because I know Event Horizon has a director's cut that's gorier, but you're probably never going to see it.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a massive shame.
Oh.
Wave to our watchers. Hello.
And then I don't know if you missed this one.
Oh, yes, my cat is. Thank you.
So, what's your favorite Australian horror film up till now at this moment in time?
That's a tough question because there's a lot I really love, but I would say, and this is definitely, people may say maybe it's not really, but no, it's a fucking horror movie in every which way. Wake in Fright, 100%. It is literally a film about going mad over the course of a few days. And I don't know what Donald Pleasance what his acting or performance was, but he's fucking frightening. And that was our very first episode of the Ozploit cast. And I think once I saw that, everything else just was like, no, that's probably my favorite, definitely in that kind of genre of Australian film. And I recommend people watch it. It's not the easiest film to watch. And certainly being from like the very early 70s. Oh God, don't. Lady Stay Dead is terrible, Tony. Please. No, we're not going to mention that movie. That's a movie you watch if you want to be brain dead and disgusted. But yeah, there's some of those in there.
We have another.
Oh, hi, Bede.
Now,
glad we got some friends watching.
I want to let everyone know that I'm in California. Super Marcey is in Australia. Super Marcey is 18 hours ahead of me. So when we started this live cast, it was 7 o'clock in the morning for her.
So no, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock wasn't too bad.
Well, 9 is still not good, but that's really early. So thank you. I didn't realize until I started doing this channel, we're not all in the same time zone. And you figure that out real quick when you get somebody's in Australia, somebody's in England and Morocco. And yeah, so thank you, because that's very hard to get up early in the morning. I'm not a morning person either, so I just
I'm trying to get better, but Bede, I will tell you, it's not Plug by far. It might be my most hated Australian movie. Again, we watch a lot of weird shit on our podcast.
So, The Thing, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness. Which one of the apocalyptic trilogy is your favorite?
It would be The Thing. I actually rewatched The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness, just as I've been watching a lot of John Carpenter and Kurt Russell this year, which is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. But The Thing for me is like in that sort of top 10 of my favorite just movies in general. It still works on every level. Again, Kurt Russell, real. Freddie, shut up and go to your bed. I know you love Kurt Russell and I know you love The Thing, but you got to go relax. I think it is one of the most intense and paranoid films, and you can still sit there and guess like who was the thing, who this and that, like insane. Okay, now Freddie has to freaking join. Say hello, Freddie. But that's not to take away from the other two films because I think they are just as awesome. And fucking stop licking my face, Freddie. I rewatched Prince of Darkness, and it had been quite a few years. And again, I just love how that film unfolds, and it's definitely a John Carpenter film, but it has a very different like feel, and I think that's what we get within the Mouth of Madness as well. You can definitely tell it's John Carpenter, but it's such a different film. Yes, Freddie, you're a movie star.
Is your dog named after Freddie Mercury?
He is indeed.
You know, that's my favorite singer in my favorite band.
That is mine too.
I went
That's
and
why he's named
saw
Freddie.
back in November. I saw Adam Lambert and Queen. It was really good. Obviously, it's not
quite the same, but yeah.
Well, no Freddie and John Deacon's retired, but you know what?
Yeah.
Those guys are not going to live forever, so I had to bite the bullet and see it. And I'm glad I did. Freddie was there on the monitor and stuff, but it was missing something. It's not quite the same since he left.
It's not quite the same. You can't see because it's very bright, but back there, which I got to work out. Back there, I've got my Queen stuff with my like Funko Pops and stuff.
I'd have to
I agree,
say,
Beat, underrated gem with Prince of Darkness.
So would you say The Thing is your favorite John Carpenter film then?
It might very well be my favorite John Carpenter movie. It's hard to rank them, but one of my I did have my top 4 on Letterboxd recently, celebrating John Carpenter with my 4 favorite films. So yeah, I'd say The Thing would be my favorite. But one of my other favorite things by John Carpenter, and Bede, I know you're watching and you know this very well because we did discuss this on Podcasters of Horror, our horror anthology podcast, is his episode of Masters of Horror, Cigarette Burns. I think it is just one of, again, I feel like it has something in common with like In the Mouth of Madness in a way, because it's got this, instead of looking for a book author, it's looking for a lost film that no one has really seen, and those that did went crazy from it. And it's under an hour, but I just think it's so amazing, and it's just one of the most incredible things I think John Carpenter has done, and it's hidden away on an anthology TV series that I still champion people should watch, and that's why we started a podcast and talked about it.
I think The Thing is a perfect film. I love Halloween. It's scary, but that movie, 1982, and the makeup effects are still considered the best by most people. It's like CGI without CGI. But then the paranoia and the who's the thing, and at the end, John is always known for his nihilistic endings. There are no happy endings in a John Carpenter film. And that film is perfect. The score, Ennio Morricone, and yeah, I think The Thing is like maybe that's 1. I'd say 2, Halloween, maybe 3, Escape from New York, and then there's I think In the Mouth of Madness is the second tier down with like Big Trouble in Little China and other films.
My ranking is like so different from I've got like The Thing, I have Cigarette Burns, I have like Big Trouble in Little China, I think, and I'm trying to think of what else I had on my list.
You have where do you rank?
I don't think Halloween is not in like my top 4, even though I think it's a great film. I'm trying to think of what I had. It might have been Escape from New York. Lots of Kurt Russell influence. And yes, Colin. Hello, Colin. The Thing does have a great ending because everybody questions what's going on. And then I'm like, it doesn't matter because nobody's winning in this scenario.
Where would you put They Live?
It's definitely high. I love it. I rewatched that again recently, and I love Roddy Piper. He's so good in that film, but man, it's just that random fight scene in They Live for like 10 minutes. It's great. John Carpenter is right up there as one of my favorite directors of all time. Just
well, and you're also a big wrestling fan, so I'm sure. Were you a wrestling fan before or after They Live?
I've been a wrestling fan since like I was 6. So definitely discovering wrestlers as actors came kind of at that time. But I think, more familiar with like Hulk Hogan's acting than Roddy Piper. That kind of came along as I got older, which kind of is unfortunate for me. But
I had a short stint as a wrestling fan. I can't say I've been a fan since like the 90s on, but I was a big advocate for Rocky 3 and I saw that in the theaters and I ran out like ready to fight somebody. And Hulk Hogan as Thunder Lips and Mr. T as Clubber Lang, I think I kind of followed them into WrestleMania and that whole era with like the mid to late 80s. From what I've read, John Carpenter actually attended WrestleMania 3, and that's where he met Roddy Piper, cast him in They Live. That's where he met Alice Cooper and put him in Prince of Darkness. So there's a
it's so
wrestling.
random because I forgot that like Alice Cooper appears in Prince of Darkness until like my recent rewatch. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the street schizo with the half broken bicycle. They shoves it into the guy's
But it's
under
now
under.
we're like gonna ramble on about Alice Cooper. It's like, let's not forget he's in like the Elm Street series as
That's true.
well.
He did a interview recently, like at a convention, and they asked him about Nightmare on Elm Street. He kind of forgot he was in Freddy's Dead. Like, dude, you were like in the flashback scenes. You were, his Freddy Krueger's dad.
You were Freddy's dad. I can
Exactly.
imagine he would probably not remember everything. It's Alice Cooper. Like, he's still freaking singing and stuff. And Thunderlip should have beaten Rocky. I love that comment, Colin. Again, like, it's probably Hulk Hogan's best role, and he's definitely not a good actor.
He's no Dwayne Johnson, huh?
I would say like the best wrestler turned actor is Dave Batista.
You almost forget that he was a wrestler. John Cena, all these
John
guys,
Cena
especially.
is actually really showing himself as like both with some serious roles, but his comedic stuff, like he's very funny.
Yeah, he does the comedy stuff really well. He's more of a comedy guy than an action guy. Where obviously Dwayne Johnson is comedy but more action.
Mm.
He's the A-list megastar. I don't know if there's a bigger action star on the planet than him, really, at this point.
I don't think there's a bigger star than The Rock, who came back recently to the wrestling as well as everything else he does. But I think he's gonna be in an A24 film, so we might see him do something completely different than what he normally does, which could be pretty cool.
I must have missed that. What's the movie called? Have you heard
I
what it
have
might
no
be?
idea. I just saw A24. I don't know
And
if the chat knows.
that sounds
I
like something different because he's mostly known for action. And if it's A24, it's
like
either going to be an art house
blockbuster
horror
action.
film or a drama or something, so that should be interesting.
I mean, I
So for
think people should take risks. That's why I quite like Dave Batista, because he takes risks with his acting, but he also plays very different characters and he does it really fucking well. So
I can't say I've seen
the
all of his
Smashing
films.
Machine from Benny I can't say that name. There we go. Thank you, Bede. Now we know
I think
A24.
the best thing I saw Dave Bautista in was, what was it, the M. Night Shyamalan film, Knock at the
Knock on the
Cabin?
Cabin.
Really good because it's a total drama piece, even though it's like a horror thriller. I thought that was he can act.
Dude
Take
can
away the
act, and I'm
big brutish guy. This guy can act. That's not a movie that most former wrestlers could probably pull off.
no. I think he's definitely something special. He put in the work for sure. But could Dave Batista start in the Sam Neill role in The Mouth of Madness? Let's bring it all the way back around.
Well, he's so big that the monsters would probably be afraid of him. He's got the big neck and the big head, and
I could almost picture him as being Sutter Kane, which would be even more fucking terrifying. Imagine Dave Batista standing in the church with like, fucking hell. I've been getting out of this fucking town right now.
So if you had for every great film, there's going to be some bad ones. What are like one or two of your Carpenter ones you're like, if I never watch it again, I won't lose sleep?
I think probably the one you mentioned before, Memoirs of an
Memoirs.
Invisible Man. It's just it's okay. But that's probably it, really. There's a lot of, I think, merit to a lot of what John Carpenter does. I know a lot of people don't like the Village of the Damned remake, but I actually quite like it. And I did see that before the original, and it had Christopher Reeve, who's my Superman, so that also helps.
He I mean, he's the best Superman as far as I'm concerned. Not to rag on the other films, but as Superman, he was the only one that was believable. Even though it was a simple glasses on, glasses off, they were two completely different people because of the way he acted as the nerdy, shy, no confidence, and then Superman is completely opposite. It's obviously it's the same guy, but it works because his acting was so good in those films.
He was perfect, and that's why I still, that's my Superman. Like, I'm not gatekeeping or any bullshit. It's like, I get there's other people that play Superman. I want to see mine. I'll go watch the first movie, the second movie. The other two, debatable.
I'll pick one underrated Carpenter film. He kind of co-directed it. Was Body Bags.
I have not seen, or have I seen Body Bags?
That was a Showtime original cable movie that came out in '93.
I know I have seen it. Yes. I don't remember it because it has been. I need to just look it up for a second. I think I have seen that.
He's like the Crypt Keeper where Carpenter plays the coroner and they bring in these bodies and he kind of unzips them and every body has a story. One is with Mark.
I might have been like very early. So yeah, it's been a long while, but it had I think Toby Hooper directed some of it as well. One what I remember, it had that really distinct sort of purpley ripping open the bag cover.
That's the VHS artwork.
Yes, that's what I remember. It was always at like the video shop. But I think this had like David Warner was in it as well.
We're back to David.
I think I remember, yeah, I'm looking it up. Yeah, there's a lot of like director cameos and stuff. But yeah, it's one that I think gets like forgotten about because it was sort of an anthology piece.
That's kind of like if I had to recommend the one underrated people maybe forgot about because it was a cable movie. I know Scream Factory has put it out on Blu-ray. But you got Mark Hamill playing a baseball player who loses his eye and gets the eye of a serial killer and starts to have the visions and the motivations of what that killer had. And that's the Toby Hooper episode. And there's another episode with Sheena Easton, the singer, with Stacy Keach, who's going bald and he gets a hair transplant, but the hair that grows on his head is quite alien in origin. Let's just say it's not what you think it is. And there's a lady at a gas station, and there's a serial killer on the loose, and she's working overnight, like graveyard shift. And all these people come up to her, and Wes Craven pops up, and Sam Raimi's in the episode. It's kind of like a collection of horror greats. So that's my underrated Carpenter film. I don't think people think about.
Yeah, I think it is sort of because, like, yeah, it was sort of on cable and stuff. But Bede, I think we might have it on our list of horror anthologies that we will cover. But I think, yeah, we need to make sure it is. Because now I'm like, I kind of want to revisit this. Been a long time. But yeah, definitely saw that.
Before we say goodbye to In the Mouth of Madness, any last thoughts on the film? Revisiting it? Just you like it more or less? Or
it's definitely gonna like remain right up there. Like every time I watch it, it just embraces me, and I embrace the madness of In the Mouth of Madness. I think it's an excellent film. It is one of John Carpenter's like most underrated films. It's very different from his other works, but it's also very much a John Carpenter film. again, like Sam Neill's performance is great, and then you have Jurgen Prochnow, I probably said it wrong, as Sutter Kane, who you don't see all that much of, but that whole presence in the film is just very freaky. And like once you start getting the really messed up, like what the fuck is going on moments, this film just like keeps delivering. And I distinctly remember like when he's out having a drink or lunch, I can't quite remember, and the Sutter Kane's agent, who we find out is the agent, comes through the freaking window and scares everybody. And he's like, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" It's like, what the fuck? I gotta keep watching this.
That's right.
It's
He's
just
got
so
the
good.
axe. He breaks the window, and then the contact lenses that the characters wear, they almost look like sheep's eyes, really creepy, where
Mm,
instead
very
of the
creepy.
circular kind of black pupil, it's kind of elongated. And anytime I go pet one of those animals, the eyes just freak me out. The goat's eyes, like just it kind of takes me back. Little subtle things like that creep me out more than the big things sometimes.
I mean, you got to be wary because they might be under the influence of Sutter Kane.
Now, we both appreciate In the Mouth of Madness, but where can people find Super Marcy as far as social media, webcast, vidcast, podcast? I know you're very busy, so I want people to know where they can find you.
The easiest place to find me is supermarcy.com. It is the home of the Super Network, where we have, Bede help me out here, like 6 podcasts under that banner. I can name them off. We've got our weekly show, the Tubi Tuesdays podcast, where we watch along a random movie that we find on Tubi. Usually it involves boobs being in that movie, or at least recently it has been. So it's a lot of fun. As mentioned before, Podcasters of Horror, which we talk about horror anthology stuff. There's the King Zone podcast, which we talk about all the adaptations of Stephen King, but that has a spin-off as well, the King Zone's Book Club podcast, where we talk about, well, so far we've been focusing on short stories, and do have a novella discussion coming up as well. What else is there? The Ozploit cast, which I mentioned, which is about all the Ozploitation films, and I feel like I might be missing one. I don't know. I think maybe that was it. And then oh yeah, the Super podcast, the main podcast. We haven't done one of those for a while. That's also there, and I'm trying to think of everything. Super Marcy, After Dark with Super Marcy is my solo podcast. I'm trying to get that going back as well. And I'm Super Marcy on all the socials and on Letterboxd, which is very important. I am super_Marcy, and that's usually a good indication of the weird shit that I watch. So yeah, that's a lot to go through, but
I know. And then you're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as well?
yes, I'm on all the socials. I'm on Blue Sky, Threads, and the Super Network is pretty much on all of those as well, if you want to keep up to date with the podcast we do. And there's a YouTube channel in there somewhere, the Super Network YouTube channel, and After Dark with Super Marcy, all on YouTube as well.
Thank you, Marcy, or Super Marcy, for coming on to talk John Carpenter and In the Mouth of Madness, Last Action Hero, just all sorts of cool things. And that's why sometimes live discussions might be better, because they're a little bit more organic and less structured, but in a good way, because you start to go on things that weren't planned, and that's what makes it fun.
So many tangents, but it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that I picked or suggested In the Mouth of Madness, because it is one that I find is really underrated. But I can also sit here and talk about The Last Action Hero or Dave Bautista's acting or whatever as well.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for the people that came on the live stream.
Yes,
We had
thank you
quite a
for
few
watching.
people engaged. Thank you, Marcy, because I feel like a lot of those people were your friends or colleagues. So I appreciate them coming on and you promoting it on social media. And I'm going to end with an outro, and we will talk to everybody soon. Thank you, everyone.